close the Green Party. Mr Greer, 8 minutes, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. In closing for the Greens, I'd like to echo the comments made by Ruth Maguire and Bruce Crawford at the outset of this debate, who called for it to be passionate but respectful. We're all political opponents, but we're not enemies. We disagree profoundly on the future of Scotland. But disagreement is healthy. It's essential to democracy. And disagreement does not need to lead to lasting division. If nothing else, that is something that we should all agree on today. None of us, I hope, want to see a repeat of the Brexit referendum, in which voters were asked to choose with little information, and sometimes outright lies, in an environment of hostility and anger. That was, on the whole, not comparable to the successful and engaging debate that we had here in 2014, though, as Andy Whiteman has mentioned, we accept that either case was not the case for everyone in either of those votes. And if we want to see such a high turnout, such engagement like we had in 2014 again, we should strive to replicate its successes and not the failures of 2016. The Scottish Greens believe that it is the right for the people of Scotland to choose between the two futures that are on offer to us, and that we should be able to do so at both a time of optimal information and opportunity. We expect the Brexit deal to be known by the autumn of 2018. The European Commission's chief negotiator, Michel Barnier, has said as much. The UK government have previously confirmed that his timescale was realistic. Giving the people the choice at that point, when the details of the deal are known, would give us the time to begin extracting Scotland from this mess before the Tories hurl Britain off the hard Brexit cliff. If that is what the voters choose, and I would not presume to guess what the outcome of the referendum would be, though I obviously hope for an independence outcome. I would not suggest for a second, though, that this path is free of challenges. Colleagues are right to raise them. But it is incumbent on those questioning the challenges of independence to defend their position, that of the Tories' hard Brexit. Adam Tompkins, for example, raised a number of valid questions in regards to an independent Scotland's EU membership, such as that of Euro adoption. On that point specifically, I would cite examples from Sweden to Poland of nations that have joined the EU since adoption was nominally a criteria, but which have of course not been compelled to do so. But when Mr Tompkins poses these questions, I cannot help but wonder when he thinks the Westminster Government drew its hard Brexit mandate from. No questions in relation to Brexit were really answered in advance of the vote. And as has been mentioned, on the very same page of their manifesto as they pledged to hold an EU referendum, the Conservatives declared their support for the single market. Not only did Scotland not vote to leave the single market, the UK as a whole did not vote to leave the single market. Others mentioned the challenges of Scotland's transition to a full EU member state. The former chief of the World Trade Organization, Pascal Lamy, said last week that there would be zero technical problems with Scotland joining the EU. Guy Verhofstadt, the European Parliament's lead negotiator, has been explicit in his belief that our membership wouldn't be a challenge, going as far as saying that Europe cannot afford to lose Scotland. We've heard welcoming words on the record from... Yes.
Can he therefore confirm that if we were to have an independence referendum and Scotland was to vote to leave the United Kingdom, that would be guaranteed continued EU membership? Can you give that cast-iron guarantee, yes or no?
Ross Greer.
The very argument, Mr Sarwar, that we are making is that either option is uncertain, but with independence, the people of Scotland would be in the driving seat rather than a Conservative government that we didn't elect. We've heard welcoming words on the record from both governing parties in Germany, from others across the continent. Now, Jenny Mara mentioned a Spanish veto, but only a fortnight ago, the leader of Spain's governing Popular Party in the European Parliament said that Scotland and Catalonia are not the same, and that Spain would not veto Scottish EU membership. Now, I don't claim to speak for the Spanish, but the assumption of an automatic veto is simply incorrect. Colleagues across the political spectrum have in recent months said much about this Parliament's right to call for a referendum. Alec Rowley, who gave a measured and substantial contribution to this debate, said just a few months ago that he would not oppose a new independence referendum. Ruth Davidson, whilst making clear her opposition to independence, said that it would be constitutionally wrong for Westminster to block a referendum. And in an interesting turn of phrase, Nick Clegg said that it would be wrong for Westminster to impose a fatwa on another referendum. So the question for colleagues from Labour, the Liberal Democrats and the Conservatives, once this Parliament is voted today, is who will you defend? A Parliament that the people of Scotland elected, or a Westminster Government that they did not? Now, Miles Briggs, John Lamont and Donald Cameron said that the First Minister should be striving for unity. But where has their leader been in striving for unity? Instead of seeking unity, or at the very least a compromise with the majorities in Scotland and Northern Ireland, Theresa May has barreled ahead with a reckless approach to Brexit. For a party which does seek to divide us on the basis of class, of country of origin, of disability, between refugees and the rest, I have little time for Tory condemnation of division. Members have been keen to discuss the will of the people. In 2014, the will of the people was to stay in the United Kingdom. I was disappointed by that, but I accepted it. In 2016, the will of the people was to remain in the European Union. Now, the Scottish Government offered the UK Government compromise proposals that could have tried to recognise and resolve both those votes, compromises that went further than the Greens would have been comfortable with, but they've been roundly ignored. These two positions are now irreconcilable, and it should be our responsibility as the representatives elected by the people of Scotland to fight for their right to choose their own future. When 27 EU nations and a number of regions, sub-state parliaments, will have their say on Scotland's future, it is only right that the people who live here have their say as well. And it should be all the people of Scotland who have that say. So I would urge Labour and the Liberal Democrats, even if you intend to vote against the final motion, please support the Green Amendment. Support the right of young people and European citizens to play their part in deciding our future if a referendum is to happen. I understand it would be futile to make this request to the Conservatives. Douglas Ross went to great lengths to state how he would be voting against the SNP and the Greens. I'm sure his constituents are delighted that there isn't a match on today to keep him away. Offside.
Douglas Ross. I don't think you've got your card in, Mr. Ross. Douglas Ross.
Can I say I'm a linesman, so I have trouble with cards, which is why I use a flag. But I thank Ross Greer for giving way. He tells me my constituents would prefer I wasn't here today voting against the SNP and Greens pushing through for a second independence referendum. Would you tell that to the hundreds of people that turned up in Forest Town Hall last night for my meeting against a second independence referendum? Because the people in Murray and many people across the Highlands and Islands are annoyed that they are going to be forced into another independence referendum because the Greens and the SNP joining up forces.
Ross Greer.
As Mr Ross is well aware, his constituents in Murray, yes, voted no in 2014, but they voted Remain in 2016 as well, and I do not presume to speak for them in either or both of those votes. I presume to give them a choice between the two irreconcilable options that now face us. Now, the Greens were proud in 2014 to make the case for progressive, internationalist, independent Scotland in Europe. And Andy Whiteman explained this afternoon what drew us to this position from the four key pillars of green politics: peace, equality, ecology and grassroots democracy. And we will be proud to run that campaign once again. And for members who have raised concerns about what we are not discussing, I would echo the point made by Jenny Gilruth. Constitutional politics, where power lies, is critical to tackling the big issues. It is critical to tackling child poverty, to creating a sustainable, healthy economy and a compassionate society. It is a more than legitimate position to believe that we can and we should do more with the powers that this Parliament already has, and to believe that we can only truly tackle the causes of poverty and inequality with the full powers of a normal nation. Now, our cause in this debate is a simple one. It's to give the people a choice. Early in the debate, and later on, we almost got there from Mike Rumbles, some adaptations have been made to that famous quote from Canon Kenyon Wright. But I think a more apt summary would be, what if that other voice we all know so well responds by saying, we say no, and we are the state? Well, we are the Parliament elected by the people of Scotland, and we say let the people choose.